It's match day. It's revenge day as Arsenal go to Newcastle with the hope of getting a win and getting their title charge back on track. Today's Arsenal news show is going to be filled with hopefully some positive transfer news and positive injury news ahead of what is a huge game. So let's crack on with it. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal News Show. Joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Today, indeed, is match day. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in and making this a part of your morning routines. If you could be ever so kind to drop a like on the video, that would be hugely appreciated. And good morning to those joining us in the chat box today. Tom, good morning to you, to Arasilki, to Grant, to Mr. Reed, Blackshine, Rob, Paul, Matt G, Damien, Glenn, Stevie, Morgie, Gazola. We've got Paul, Angry Pacifist, Lars, Colin, Mark, and plenty more of you guys and girls too. Thank you, as always, for tuning in, especially on a Saturday morning. I can understand why not everybody is up at this time on a weekend, but I appreciate you being here with me and making this, as I always say, just part of your morning duties. Without further ado, let's jump into today's stories, though, and we kick off with another game. Last night, Sporting taking on an opponent of varying poor quality in Spain. In Portugal, Estrella Amadora was their opponent. Viktor Gyokeres scored 4 times, including a penalty. Maximilian Araujo scored the 5th goal of the evening to win 5-1 on the night. And speaking after the game, he actually came out to speak about the recent or the expected and imminent departure of Ruben Amorim to Manchester United. And Victor said, going with Amorim to Man United, ? I don't know. I'm here. As you can see, I enjoy it at Sporting, and it's nothing I think about. I'm sad about him leaving, and I wish him all the best. So, I mean, Manchester United already being mentioned, even by the words of Viktor Gyokeres himself, as he is expected to take on the Man United role in the coming weeks. He's kind of agreed a transitional process from Sporting. I think it'll be after the next international break that he takes on and takes charge of the Manchester United side. It means, of course, he will be in charge for the game against Arsenal at the start of December. I think it's his 3rd game after he arrives that he'll be in charge of. So that is still yet to come with Viktor Gyokeres, still a key part of that squad, but he's focused on that. Will Arsenal have more competition? Will Arsenal be in the race? Well, we're expecting that to be the case. We know Arsenal have had an interest in him for some time. We know that Arsenal followed him and scouted him. Will they move for him? That remains a big question. Moving forward, though, into the Brazilian news of the squad that is expected to be taking place against Uruguay and Venezuela in the November international break. Gabriel Magalhaes has, as expected, been called up for the squads. He's now become a key figure and one of their starting centre halves in the team. But there is no room for Martinelli. He is not in the squad whatsoever, which means he will remain with the Arsenal team. And those that are not taking part in international duty, he will remain with the team in November, which I suppose for fans is probably good news. We know that Martinelli, of course, suffered a minor injury while with Brazil in their previous round of fixtures. So there's no risk of that happening again. But I think Martinelli, of course, as any Brazilian player is, they will be disappointed. He will be disappointed. He will be gutted that he's not part of that squad, part of that team. But I do think that, of course, I do think that, of course, I'm thinking more about Arsenal. I'm lacking in care for the Brazilian side of things, and even perhaps for Martinelli's feelings about not being in the squad to a degree, because we've had so much bad news, so much frustration that, being in a position where we can keep players like Martinelli at the club and not have to worry about what they're going to do on international break is a big benefit for us. We know Ødegaard, of course, Arsenal remain in talks with the Norwegian national team over his progression, over whether or not he's going to be available for them during the next international break. I think Arsenal would rather that he got a much-needed rest, even if he comes back and plays some part in the games before the break. But that's the news regarding the Brazilian national side. Now, Mikel Arteta did indeed take to his press conference yesterday and was asked about a lot of different topics. In fact, it started off with a question about his homeland, about Spain, who right now, as we all have, I'm sure, seen on the news, have been going through some absolutely horrendous flooding in Valencia in particular and the surrounding areas. And he said, before we start to talk about football, I would like to talk about the terrible disaster that is affecting my country at the moment. I want to send from our side our thoughts, our full support and our sympathy to everyone who is affected, all the families and all the individuals. Obviously, all of the country that is pulling together to try and find the best possible solution in this difficult moment. And from here, I just want to show my full support and ask everybody in the way that they can to support, because it's terrible what has happened. And for anyone that isn't aware or isn't educated on the topic at the moment, I recommend doing some reading and just kind of put yourself into the minds of those affected by what's going on. There's more than 200 people have sadly lost their lives in these horrible floods that have hit the Spanish city and the Spanish area. And of course, it's led to some pretty horrible scenes. So our thoughts are certainly with any of those of you that are affected, and of course, any of those of you that have got family and friends in the area as well. Moving into the football, though, he was asked about Gabriel's availability and said that we have a training session today, so if he can complete that, he'll be available. And he hasn't had any training sessions yet, but if he's able to do that today, he'll be in the squad. Asked about other injury news, he said Ricardo and Martin are definitely out. With Ben, we don't know yet. He hasn't trained yet. He could not train. He could not get involved. So let's wait and see if he's available. And of course, we've got a little more update on that in the next slide. But continuing through, on last season's trip to St James's Park, we all know that it wasn't comfortable, was it? It was a really controversial game, plenty of refereeing, question marks. He says it's part of the past and part of the situation that happened. You learn from it. You take a lot of positives as well, and we move on. He was asked about if the standard of refereeing has improved since then. He says, my intention was not that the comments worked. I have to say what I feel on the day. They're certainly trying their best, is what he said, which, yeah, I thought was hilarious, to be honest. I thought that was a perfect answer. They're certainly trying their best, he was asked when it was said to him, do you think that they are getting better? They're trying, but they're not really getting better, are they? He was asked about how White performed at centre-back against Liverpool, and he says that's Ben's quality. He can play in those two positions. Within those positions, he can adapt his role and play different heights, especially in the ball possession we're demanding against a very difficult, tricky opponent with very particular duels, especially in that section of the pitch. To do that job when he hasn't played there for over a year, I think he was really good. He was asked about Ruben Amorim joining Man United, and he says, I cannot talk about these kind of situations. I was actually at Ange Postecoglou's press conference yesterday covering for my colleague Ali Gold, and he was asked also about Ruben Amorim, but he just basically turned around and said he looks forward to meeting him on the touchline in a few weeks' time. And then there was an interesting part about Thomas Partey and his contract. He said he's only 31 and he's in a really good place. And yeah, we'll have discussions. So not ruling out quite yet, you know, that situation with Partey's potential contract not being ruled out. We've still not heard anything about contract talks being undertaken yet, but it's not something that's been ruled out at this stage of where we're at either, which I guess is, you know, it's nice to leave it open. He was asked about his meditation helping him with refereeing decisions. And he says, on the touchline, I haven't got to that point of meditating more. And he kind of stood there like that, which is quite funny. Maybe it's something that has to happen. I just want the best for the team, and I want to give the team the best chance to be as competitive as they can to win the majority of football matches. So I know that when they change the rules on certain behaviours on the touchline, we need to evolve, and that's what I try to do. He also spoke about how he aims to be, you know, better on the touchline and not miss any games as well. And he was asked about Tomiyasu and said, I don't expect him to be available before the break, unfortunately, which is yeah, a bit of a shame and a reality check, I think, on that scenario. But I want to give you another update on White and Gabriel, because in the following fallout from that press conference, there has been kind of leaks on social media suggesting that both White and Gabriel trained. I think there was something of an open training session in the afternoon, which gave us an indication that both White and Gabriel trained. Whether or not either of them are, of course, going to be in the squads is another question, but there are good positive signs about both of those two players. So let's keep fingers crossed that we do see them with the group and do see them with the squad and are maybe in the team for the game against Newcastle today, because they would be big pluses to have if indeed they are available. So fingers crossed, both of them hopefully will have a say in today's fixture. Right, let's go to part two and your questions right after this. Okay, this is part 2 of the show where we jump into the chat box and tackle some of your questions. So if you've got any, now is the time to throw them in. Use a capital Q. It really does help them stand out. And of course, if you're watching this on catch up, you may be watching this maybe even after the game has happened. So of course, we record this every single morning at 8 a.m. And with it being an early kickoff, there's only just over 4 hours between now and kickoff. If you're unable to watch the game for whatever reason, we'll be doing a live blog over on the football.london website, so you can catch over there as well. Damien says, Tom, why was you not camping outside the hotel in Newcastle to see if Gabriel and Ben White had travelled? It's a fair question, Damien, I have to ask. But as someone who's further north than me, I could ask the same question of you. You've got more access to me, to the northern parts of the country, Damien. So I think maybe you should have been up there instead of me. Cooper says, Arteta and his staff admin knew exactly how to handle the team with rotation so as to avoid this cursed international break. It's seriously too much for all of us. It's difficult to disagree with that. PTM says, people ask what Arteta has brought to Arsenal. I say validity. I mean, he's brought a lot of things to Arsenal. But for those asking that question, need to ask a little bit. Need to go a little bit deeper, I think, into their thoughts and reflections of what Arsenal have done and changed and evolved over the last 5 years. Arteta's validity, he's established Arsenal as a title challenger. We have high expectations of the club. We expect to be challenging for the league every season now and challenging for every trophy. That wasn't the case prior to his arrival. We were in a purgatorial state, didn't really know where we were going, didn't know what the project was, didn't know what capacity or potential we had. So yeah, it's amazing to see where this club has come since then, and it's gone to a very good place. Matthew says it's a running lyric sheet. Is there a running lyric sheet for all the songs that we have? I don't think there is. I suggested it potentially having kind of one added to the program on a match day so that fans could, if they are unaware of or unfamiliar with some of the songs, that they were given kind of a hymn sheet in the program. I think that's a really nice idea of the ones that are PG, of course. So it's certainly something that I think we should be having. Matt G says, oh, Tom with a clap back on Damien there. This is why I tune in. The drama. Yeah, it's just Tom versus Damien this morning. It's the drama we've all been looking at. And Damien says, I couldn't find out what hotel it was. It's not good enough, Damien, mate. You need to be doing your research, mate. You've got to do your homework. You've got to find these things out. You can't expect me to be up there if you don't even know what the hotel is. Goodness gracious me. Freddie says, was Ange gruff yesterday? He was in quite a good mood yesterday, Ange Postecoglou, to be fair. It was a very busy day at the Spurs training ground. So busy, I had to park in a field pretty much outside of the training ground because they had no parking left. I was looking around like, got this massive multi-million pound training ground and I'm parking next to a digger. It was not a good place to park the car. It didn't feel too secure, that's for sure. But yeah, he was in a pretty good mood yesterday. CJ Dan says, do you think Ødegaard will go away with Norway? Probably. If he's back before the international break, they'll turn around and argue that, he should be with the squad. So I imagine that will be the case, yeah, which is frustrating, but it's the reality that we find ourselves in as well. The Walking Man says, agreed, we are taken seriously now. We were a joke before. Black Magic says, what incentives do Arsenal have to offer Viktor Gyokeres to tempt him to Arsenal over the likes of United? Well, Champions League football for starters, a higher level of expectation around winning the league. That's where Arsenal are right now. You've got the fact that Rasmus Højlund, Joshua Zirkzee are there as well. So you'd think the competition for places at centre forward, even at Man United, who are further down the table, is significantly different. Working with Mikel Arteta, who's worked with Ruben Amorim, that's taken him to this point. Maybe it's time to take on a coach that could take him to an even higher level than he's already had. Arteta's record of improving players is well established by now. We all know that. So a lot of, and potentially, the wages would be high at Man United as well. But it's just that level of competition, I think, and Champions League football that you could offer to him that you couldn't perhaps offer with Manchester United. Fizzy says, what's your take about Arsenal releasing Gyokeres' release clause in January to avoid a bidding war in the summer? If they can afford it, do it. But it's a question mark of whether they can afford it in January because Arsenal had a net zero summer, but the cycle of PSR runs through until July. So we may have to wait until the summer before we go in with a big bid of the €100 million release clause that currently exists in his contract. Akuba says, Tom, I don't remember you coming out and saying with chest what Arsenal needs in the next transfer window. Won't put you on the spot with names, but let's hear what positions you think. We have talked about it a fair few times. We talked about, I think, that another a versatile attacker definitely is needed, because I don't think it's possible to bring in a number 10 that then blocks the pathway of Nwaneri. So I think you need a Mohamed Kudus type to bring that versatility and quality across multiple positions. I think we all would love to see a top centre forward come into the club and add competition and replace Gabriel Jesus as well. I think another midfielder is going to be needed, because Jorginho is going to be moving on the summer, maybe Partey as well. So another midfielder. And I think that we've seen that we do need to replace Tommy Asu. I think a versatile fullback, is another player that we probably need. Zinchenko's future is certainly not secure either. I know Miles Lewis-Skelly's coming through, but I think that we still need to add another defender, and we're going to need another goalkeeper, because Neto is only on loan. So there you go. Granny Pooh says, no parking, no cups, and no class. Did you have a good time at Spurs? It's not bad. Yeah, the cake was nice. If that's any benefit, cake and tea and cake was lovely. Freddie says, I worry about the state of the pitches in some of the international games. I don't want to aggravate the ankle injury again. Absolutely. I'll be watching the game from home today. I'll be covering the game from home. Kaya's obviously at the ground. I've done the last couple of trips to St James's Park. It is a ground I enjoy going to. It's a city I enjoy going to. It's a great city, is Newcastle. But I'm covering the game from home today. So if you're not able to watch it for whatever reason, as I say, there'll be a live blog and a minute-by-minute commentary over on the FL website. So come follow us over there. Lay Bloomer says, Marino got valuable minutes on the international break, so maybe that can help Odegaard to speed up somewhat as well. It's a fair point, talking about injuries and the comeback as well. So definitely something. And Fergus is off to the local pub today to watch the game. Always a good atmosphere when watching the games with other people and other fans in the pub, I'm sure. But yeah, it's an interesting one. If you want to go and kind of get further thoughts about the game, myself and Dan, one of our members, did a preview show. So that is also up on the channel for you to watch. If you want to get my thoughts on the lineup of the team that I would pick, on who I would go for, that is all available in the preview show. So do make sure you go over to the last live upload on the channel before this one and give that a watch as well. Suga says, Tom, thoughts on Omar Marmoush? He's got 8 goals and 4 assists in 7 games so far this season for Frankfurt. Can't say I'm too familiar. 25-year-old centre forwards, 11 goals in 13 games and 7 assists. I mean, it's an impressive record, to be fair to the guy. I can't say I've come across him all that much. Egyptian striker, playing for the national side, and he's really come alive this season. He joined from Wolfsburg last year on a free transfer. How did he get on last season for Frankfurt? Let's have a quick look. He ended last season on 17 goals and 6 assists in 41 games. It's a pretty decent return, more than 1 goal contribution every other game. Good records. Can't say I know too much about him though, Sugar. So he's not one that's popped up on the radar, meaning I'm not aware if Arsenal are looking at him either. Dan says, will we go in and get Hato this summer? Now I'm seeing he's being linked with Liverpool. Yoel Hato, of course, was a player linked heavily with Arsenal last summer, and someone that Arsenal have remained very much interested in. He did sign a new contract through until 2028. So if you're going to try and buy the kid, he's going to be very, very expensive. He's only 18 years old, but he's already played 17 games this season, 3 goals, 3 assists, mainly playing as a left back, but he can play as a centre back as well. And he's already also got 3 caps for the senior Netherlands national side as well. A number of clubs definitely are appreciative of him. With Liverpool now having a Dutch coach, it's not surprising to see them linked with Hato too. But he's a player that Arsenal have looked at a lot. But with Miles Lewis-Skelly coming through, maybe we no longer will be in the market for Hato because of how impressive Lewis-Skelly has been and how his growth has taken him through the team. So yeah, maybe that will change Arsenal's kind of appreciation or pursuit of Hato in the future. And Late Bloomer says, could Hato cost more than Timber? Most likely at this stage, with his age, his Netherlands caps, his long contracts, the year being 2 years on from when we signed Timber, I would imagine that they would ask for more now than what Arsenal had to pay for Timber. Matt G says, Tom, any chance that you can get a message to Isak that he doesn't need to put himself in the shop window for Arsenal? If you can just run around for 90 minutes and stay fit, that'd be great. Yeah. Tizer says, Jonathan David contract is up in the summer along with Sane. Would you consider these lifting the floor? Anyone else whose contracts are up, would you take? I mean, both of those players are very much figures that I think will be hot properties for free transfers. Trent Alexander-Arnold, another player whose contract is expiring. Alphonso Davies, Joshua Kimmich. Other ones, Heung-min Son's deal is actually up at the end of the season, believe it or not. So is Kevin De Bruyne's, Virgil van Dijk, Neymar. Wow, these names are pretty crazy. Angel Gomez at Lille, the England international, also sees his contract expire at the end of this season. He could be someone to look into. Franck Ongisa, Napoli centre midfielder, 28 years old now. His deal is up. Tyrick Mitchell at Crystal Palace, 25 years of age, very impressive England international left back. His contract is up at the end of the season too. Someone called Lionel Messi, his contract's up at the end of the season. Maybe someone to look at. Ferland Mendy at Real Madrid, his deal is up. Denzel Dumfries, Inter Milan, his deal is up. Harry Maguire, another player whose contract's up at the end of the season. Marco Verratti, a player will be on the market as well. As yes, a lot of players. Cristiano Ronaldo, his contract's up at the end of the season. Mario Pasalic at Atalanta, his contract's up too. Tariq Lamptey, believe it or not, at Brighton, his contract's up. Alex Mere at Napoli, a goalkeeper that maybe could be looked at as a number 2 for Arsenal. He wouldn't be a bad shout, I don't think, at all, to be a number 2 goalkeeper with his contract up at the end of the season as well. So, yeah, a lot of big players whose contracts do indeed expire. Of course, it is early in the season, and usually they are. New contracts are signed well before the end of the campaign for a fair few of those names I've mentioned. But while they are expiring, there is always that chance that maybe we see Arsenal move for them. Wonton Soup says, do you think that if we decided to wait an extra season for our striker targets to prove themselves, Isak to prove his fitness and Šeško and Gyokeres to prove their ability and consistency? Regarding the latter two, no, I think this is a good season, of course, to kind of assess them, to see how they're getting on. And then in the summer, I think either of those two would be great. Isak, I think, has already proven himself. I think he would be a good one. I know what you're saying about the fitness levels, but I think that his injuries kind of are a little bit overstated somewhat, I think, sometimes. And it's not as bad as some people make out. But yeah, I think that next summer, I want it to be the striker summer. I want that to be the summer that we really go for that centre forward that's going to change Arsenal for the better in a really, really big way. Stephen says, we don't need Messi because we've got Messo. Of course, Leo Messo. You may remember, young Arsenal talent, of course, has been at the club for a short amount of time. Haven't heard much about him, to be fair, since his arrival at Arsenal. He signed as a 10-year-old, I think. He's now 12, but I haven't heard anything about him at all since that signing a couple of years ago. John says, is Mohamed Salah out of contract at the end of the season? He is indeed. He is out of the contract at the end of the season as well. Akuba says, been watching Newcastle deeply this season. They're seriously porous in the back line while having slightly opposite meaning strong in the back and weak up front. Should be interesting cat and mouse type game. I wouldn't say we're weak up front. Havertz, Saka, and Martinelli weak up front. I wouldn't agree with that at all. I wouldn't say that Saka, Martinelli, and Havertz are weak up top. I think it's incredibly dismissive of the talent that we've got. Anyway, we're going to win today. You know that we are. Let's make sure we bring home this result. Thank you so much as always for tuning in and listening. I need to head off to work now. And by head off to work, I mean move that way to my computer, and that's about it. But thank you so much as always for tuning in. Do drop a like on the video and subscribe. I'll be back with you tomorrow morning to round up the game in all of its detail, breaking down what everything went down. Have a fantastic evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you happen to be in the world. Enjoy the game. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.